Welcome back to SleeplessRonin Plays. Today, we're going to be doing part 4 of the Technical Readout 3058 tier list rankings. Part 4. Today's tier list is going to be talking about battle armor. We have 20 suits of battle armor to cover, so we're going to get right into it. Now, I'll probably be dropping in to talk a little bit about rules and various things as we move along, because battle armor may not be well known to everybody out there. I quite enjoy using battle armor, so I think I have the rules down pretty well. So let's jump right in. First up, we're going to start with the battle armor that started all battle armor, really. The Clan Elemental. This is our baseline. I mean, I'm gonna just drop this sucker into its ranking position before we actually go anywhere else, because this is the mark where we're going to look and see whether a suit is better or worse than. Oh, let me start over a little bit more. We have 5 categories like we usually do. I thought about only putting in 4 today, but I decided to go with the 5. The green category that I just put the elemental in is basically an elemental. That's our baseline category. It is a bit higher up because, honestly, it's really hard to be better than an elemental. So we have the category superior to an elemental in blue. Below that, below the basically an elemental category, in orange is below an elemental. It's just not as good as an elemental. A lot of Inner Sphere battle armor is going to fall into this category. Just never is going to make it quite there. For one thing, Inner Sphere battle armor suffers from a design flaw that no clan battle armor suffers from. If an Inner Sphere battle armor has torso-mounted missile racks, it is unable to jump until it has jettisoned those missile racks. So that's a definite downside for Inner Sphere battle armor. Meanwhile, the clan elementals can carry that 2-shot SRM2 rack per guy, jump and fire them. They're great. There you go. They can do that. In the far below category, that means that's really a battle armor that's lacking. And I really hope we don't have any that are going to fall into the why category. That is the why are we doing this? Why does this even exist? What's the point? As we go through this, I will also attempt to try and discuss some of the rules about battle armor a little bit when we see things. Because when you see things like stealth armor on elementals, or on elementals, but on battle armor, mimetic armor, grenade launchers, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's just not typically covered in Battletech, you need to know the rules. There's a lot of the rules for battle armor are different than they are for mechs and vehicles. So, again, back to our baseline. Our baseline, basically an elemental, is basically an elemental. There are multiple variants, and if I was separating them out, I would definitely rank the Headhunter variant lower, but not a lot lower, definitely lower. But the basic elemental, the good one, has a detachable SRM2 with 2 shots. It's got a movement of 1 ground MP or 3 jump MP, which is really good. It weighs a ton per guy, or 1,000 kilograms per guy, 1 ton per guy. They have 10 points of armor and the trooper inside, so it takes 11 points of damage to kill a guy, which is good. And they have a whole swath of weapons. They've got small laser option, flamer option, machine gun option, micro pulse laser option, ER micro laser option, or heavy machine gun option. That's really important because, yeah, that's a lot of options. Now, I do believe that if we actually dig into more expanded stuff, like they might even have a variant that's Jihad era, that's got better weaponry. I'm not 100% certain. I did look up a lot of battle armor, but this one just escaped me at the moment. Still. Now, that's the main 2 weapons of the elemental, the SRM2 rack and the modular weapon mount. But a lot of people that play battle armor might forget that they also have an anti-personnel weapon mount. This is important. This is technically a 3rd weapon you can use against battle mechs. It only does the equivalent damage of like a 5-man rifle platoon of infantry, so not a lot, but it's still an amount of damage. And it can be fired at range 0, which is pretty cool also. You can be firing it right there, and you can kill other infantry with it. It's very important to have. But it can do damage to mechs. It doesn't have much of range, like it's rifles on infantry guys. But you can use it against mechs, so this is an important thing. That any battle armor that has a check mark, I'll show this off in another graphic, in the AP box of the battle armor, can fire an anti-personnel weapon equal to the number of guys remaining in the platoon. So if you have like one guy, you're not going to do any damage really. But if you have like 5 men, you can do like up to 3 points of damage, I do believe, which is 2 clusters of 1 and or 2 clusters of 2-1. So cluster 2, cluster 1, which is actually pretty good. So there we go. So we really have our starting unit, which is the basic clan elemental. So now we're going to jump backwards and we're going to cover the inner sphere battle armors first, because that's just the way things go. The first one up is the Achileus battle armor from the inner sphere. It's a battle armor mostly used by Word of Blake and the Free Worlds League. It's a light battle armor weighing only 750 kilograms per guy, so if you're running Free Worlds League, a unit of 4 of these guys can actually fit into a 3-ton infantry cargo area. If you're running Word of Blake, unfortunately, they're going to take up a lot more weight because they're 6 men per platoon, and that would be 4.5 tons. The Word of Blake version is not combat effective. It has an anti-personnel mount, and that's it for guns. It's got an improved sensors and an ECM suite. Now, the ECM suite for battle armor does not work the same as it does for mechs. It doesn't have the power to run off of. ECM in an elemental unit only blocks electronics in the square it's in. So you can put your battle armor unit into like an enemy C3 master computers, like you can stack with infantry and battle armor. If you get your battle armor unit onto like where an enemy C3 master computer is, you will shut down their network. Or if you are in that one exact hex to block the line between like where they draw between the master and its slave, you can still turn the network off. But it's not nearly as effective or easy to use as actual ECM on a mech. It's got a tiny 1 hex area. So that's something you have to deal with when you're running battle armor ECM. The Free Worlds League version, the standard version, only has 4-man platoon, has a weapon mount and a anti-personnel mount. The weapon mount can only mount flamers, machine guns, or small lasers, but it works. This one has a 1 MP ground movement and 3 MP jump movement, so like an elemental. It has basic manipulators, so it's able to do swarm, leg attack. It can be mechanized, so it can hang on to Omni-Mechs. And it has anti-personnel guns. It is only 7 armor, or 7 health per trooper, 6 points of armor, and 1 point of soldier inside, so it's definitely not as defensive as the elemental. But it does have improved stealth armor, so it's harder to hit. Improved stealth gives it a +1 modifier to being shot at short range. This is on top of battle armor's natural +1 modifier to being shot at all, plus any of their movement modifiers and normal range modifiers. It's got a +2 at medium and a +3 at long range. So these things are actually very hard to target at long range for anybody really. Because you got your long range modifier of +4, +3 more, these things are hard as heck to hit at long range. You're just not going to tag them very easily. So that's a benefit for them. Overall though, these are not as good as an elemental. They're below an elemental because they're lacking the offensive capability of an elemental. Next up, we have the Grey Death Scout. It's a scout battle armor. This thing is not going to be doing offensive stuff. It's used by the Grey Death Legion, so yay for that. It's got 1 ground MP and 4 jump MP, so it actually can go pretty far in the air for battle armor. It has only 4 points of armor and 1 form for the guy, so a medium laser will kill one of these guys dead. And it's a scout. What does it have for equipment? An active probe. It has a jump booster, but I think that's already included into the movement, so that's why it goes to 4. But other than that, it has an active probe. That's it. Yay! That is, I don't know, is it below an elemental or far below an elemental? It's not a combat suit. So I'm just going to put it far below, because I'm sorry to say. There are better things to scout with in Battletech's universe, mostly found in the form of vehicles that go very fast. Helicopters or hovercraft are much better scouts than a unit of battle armor. I suppose in an urban environment these things might work out pretty well, but aside from that, I don't think that they're worth it compared to a vehicle. Maybe you stick them into a transport vehicle and then drop them. I don't know. I just don't. I've never honestly dropped them on the tabletop because I don't think they're all that great. Next up, the Infiltrator Mk.I. This thing makes me kind of go, bah. It is got 2 ground MP, no jump MP. Ugh. It has basic stealth armor, which is not as good as the stealth armor on the Achileus, of +0 at short, +1 at medium, +2 at long. The basic one can travel via Mk.I, so it can be on an Omni-Mech. Aside from that, it has a heat sensor, which I will say right now, I don't know the rules for this. I don't know all the battle armor rules. I just kind of like walk by this one and don't really use them. And then it has a grenade launcher. And grenade launchers are a piece of technology you have to dig into tech manual to find out about. It's largely I think it's an anti-infantry weapon of some variety, but it doesn't say anti-infantry on the actual thing. And this thing doesn't have an AP weapon mount. The grenade launcher does 1 damage per guy, up to 3 hexes in range. It's hard to express how much I would never bother dropping this thing on the field. I mean, it doesn't cost any points to drop this thing on the field either, really. The modern battle value, I do believe, is 95 points for a squad of 4 of these guys. They're cheap, but I don't honestly think they're worth much of anything at all. I mean, bleh, they don't impress me one bit. I mean, these are kind of going to be the first thing I'm going to put in the just why category. I mean, just why, because just why are you making me go and deal with a whole bunch of bizarre, tiny little side rules for these things for something that's bleh in the first place? So, just why. Next up, we have the Kage, a Draconis Combine light one. This thing's okay. Its basic loadout has got 1 movement ground and 4 movements jump, which is pretty good. The downfall to the Kage battle armor, though, is that in most cases, only 1 man per platoon has a weapon or piece of equipment. That's soldier number 1 usually. For the Kage ECM squad, 1 guy carries the ECM suite, which still does the exact same thing as the previously talked about battle armor ECM. Limited range, really only fix what's in a square. It's got basic stealth armor, so it's got the same armor as the Infiltrator. It's got a partial wing, which is why I can go jump 4. The one that has the weapon mount, the laser or flamer or machine gun per guy, or light tag. The light tag is actually I think is probably the best about them, because you can jump and use that little light tag, and that's going to help Arrow 4 and indirect LRMs. This is not a just why, but the Kage is definitely a far below an elemental. It's not combat worthy really at all. The best version is just for the light tag. It's not really much of a scout even. I mean, honestly, the Infiltrator wasn't much of a scout either. It's not very good for even a light battle armor. I'm not impressed with battle armor that can't actually battle. Next up, the Cavalier. The Cavalier is kind of like the specialized Federated Commonwealth version of the Inner Sphere standard battle armor. We'll get to that one later on. This one is back to weighing the same as an elemental, 1 ton. The 4 previous ones all weighed 750 kilograms, so they weren't 1-tonners. This is a 1-ton battle armor suit. It's got 1 ground MP, 3 jump MP. It has an armor value of 9 plus the trooper, so it's only 1 point below an elemental. We're actually getting pretty close to an elemental in this guy. It has 4 weapon mounts possible, and none of these are actually torso-mounted missiles. There is an SRM variant. It's an SRM-1 with 4 shots, but that SRM is on the arm, which means that it can actually still jump and have that missile going. It's only 4 shots of the SRM, so it's not the best. You can only use it 4 times. And the Cavalier is missing the anti-personnel weapon mount that the Elemental has. This is below an Elemental. Let's rate it right now. It is definitely below an Elemental, but it's starting to actually become a more combat-worthy battle armor. Thankfully, it is mechanized. It can do swarm and leg attacks, so it's got those going for it. But still, it's obviously not an Elemental, because it has 1/3 of the weapons an Elemental can carry. And it's still 1 point less armor. I mean, I'm not saying it has to have more armor to be equal to an Elemental, or even the same amount of armor, but it needs to have at least an offensive capability that makes you go, okay, that's good. I mean, elementals are actually truly kind of frightening on the battlefield because they can wreck a lot of stuff with their little weapons mount. They're scary. I like them a lot. Next up, the Shih. This one kind of drives me nuts too, because this is another one a little bit like the Infiltrator in that fact that you have to go and dig deeply into like the tech manual and other sources to get all the rules for it, because these things carry a interesting selection amount, but all of them have mine dispensers. So if you're not even playing with the rules for landmines, because that's an extra level of like, complexity to the game that you may not want to include, the Shih has got one of its major pieces of equipment that's just totally being not used. These are Capellas, obviously battle armor. They're like variant of the Inner Sphere Standard. I mean, it's a little bit more than the Inner Sphere Standard because you got the mine dispensers. But it's a 1,000 kilogram battle armor again. It has a jumping, it has a ground MP of 1 and a jumping MP of 3. It has mine clearance equipment built into the arm. So again, if you're not using landmine rules, the mine clearance technology it has not so useful. It has an armor value of 7 plus 1 trooper, so it's a large laser kills a guy. It's technically better than some things. Definitely not an elemental level. It always has an anti-personnel mount, which is good, so it has the AP rifles. And it has multiple weapon options: flamers, machine guns, small lasers, light tag. And then if you start digging into more things, like that's just the variants on 3058, but there are further variants that came out in the Jihad era stuff, like the light recoilless rifle, which is actually a pretty darn good weapon for a unit of battle armor, because it has a up to 6 hex range, meaning it's longer than your machine guns, it's longer than your small lasers and your flamers. It actually can go to 6 hexes, and it does 2 points of damage per guy, which is just like a machine gun but double range. That's pretty nice. These things also have magnetic clamps, which is another thing that's useful when you're like trying to clamp up mechs. They are mechanized, swarm, can do leg attacks, and they're anti-personnel. Again, these are just going to be below an elemental. And in some ways, I want to rate them lower, but that's because they have the extra burden of more and more rules. You have to go and dig up and make sure you know before you can use these on the tabletop. That's one of the issues with battle armors. The battle armor is a lot of extra rules. I mean, you need to know the rules of where they're hanging on a mech when they're being transported by an omni-mech under the mechanized rules for battle armor. You need to know how to deal with them being hit by weaponry. You need to know, let's say you're trying to do a swarm attack against a mech. It already has battle armor on it. You need to know all these rules about how your battle armor is going to battle their battle armor as it's climbing up in order to actually get in the swarming of the mech. There's a lot of... Battle armor is a lot of fun, but it also opens up a lot of new rules that if you're not really ready to deal with, could be confusing and or frustrating. I have to admit that. My first couple times playing with battle armor was going, what? Huh? So yeah, they take a little bit used to. They are not as nearly as straightforward as battle mechs or vehicles even. Next up, we have the Grey Death standard battle armor, which is going to be one of the ones that gets relatively close to the Inner Sphere Standard again, which is not quite as good as an elemental, but that's kind of going to be the theme of the Inner Sphere ones. Most of them are not going to be quite as good as an elemental. Some of them are going to be kind of amazing. I'm going to say that now. Some of them are going to be pretty amazing. But back to the Grey Death Standard. It's another 1,000 kilogram battle armor suit. It's got 3 ground MP and no jumping MP. That's unusual. That's very strange. Now, I suppose I should say also that for just like infantry, battle armor do not suffer a movement modifier to their shots. So no matter how fast or how far battle armor go, be it 1 hex on the ground or 4 hexes via jumping, they do not have a movement modifier. They do not have a walk, run, or jump modifier. So if your elementals are jumping and they're clan elementals, which means they should probably be gunnery 3, anti-mech 4, they start their shooting with a 3. That's really cool, because they carry those SRMs, which are 9 hex range. So you got your 3 plus 4 at long range, 7. If the enemy is barely moving, that might be worthwhile to fire those LRMs at a long range, just because you got good hit numbers. That's makes battle armor hit mechs very well when they're close to mechs. They're not usually close to mechs though. Well, they don't have to be because battle armor slow, mechs can generally are faster than 3 hexes. Still, this is able to move 3 hexes ground for the Great Standard, which is pretty cool. It has 9 health, or 9 armor, and 1 point of man. So again, 10, not the 11 of the elemental. It's got a modular weapon mount, just like usual. It has anti-personnel weapon mounts. So it's got 2 guns. It's got your modular mount and your anti-personnel mount. And it has an SRM4 with SRM1 with 4 shots. It's got light recoilless rifle versions, flamers, machine guns, and small laser variants. Overall, again, it's right there in the... It's just below an elemental. It's industry design, so they're always going to be a little bit lacking the clans in general, but it's really close. I mean, it's pretty darn good. And it kind of looks pretty cool, too. Next up, we have the Infiltrator Mk.II. Yay! Another Infiltrator suit. I'll be honest, this one's not as bad. It has standard stealth armor. It's another 1,000 kilogram battle armor suit. It's got only 6 points of armor and the guy inside, so a total of 7. It's got 1 ground MP, 3 jump MP. Okay. The standard variant mounts a mag shot Gauss rifle, which sounds kind of cool, but is just essentially a light recoilless rifle with better range. So it does 2 damage per guy at up to 9 hexes, which is honestly not bad. I mean, we're getting some elementals that got some range on them, or not elementals, we're getting some battle armor that's got some range on them right now, which is pretty cool. They have an ECM suite on the basic variant. They got their anti-personnel weapon mount, and they have a parafoil, which I'll just say right now, I don't know the rules for a parafoil. I'd have to dig that up as well. I mean, like I said, battle armor even gets me on rules. I have trouble sometimes with these things. Yay. There's another variant called the sensor variant, which is definitely not very good compared to the light recoil or the mag shot Gauss rifle one. It has 2 anti-personnel weapon mounts, but that doesn't mean you get to use them twice. You still only get to fire 1 anti-personnel weapon mount. It's really kind of weird. I don't really understand the rules on that too well, but that's my understanding is that even if you have more anti-personnel weapon mounts, it doesn't increase your number of things you're shooting. This one I'm going to say is far below because it's really a lot weaker in durability to an elemental. The stealth armor does definitely improve it, and the mag shots, yeah, we'll raise up to below an elemental because the mag shot's got the good 9 hex range, and that's a no ammo limit weapon, so you can just keep firing that all game long until you're finally killed. Far better than the Infiltrator Mk.I, which is just a raw piece of garbage. Next up, we finally have come to the Inner Sphere Standard Battle Armor. 1,000 kilogram battle armor, ground MP 1, jump MP 3, standard armor, so just like an elemental armor, 9 plus 1, so only 10 points, not quite the elementals, 11, and it only carries 1 gun per guy and no anti-personnel weapon. Ugh, that makes me unhappy. It carries a flamer, a machine gun, a small laser, or a single-shot SRM2. Ugh. Nyeh. One of the funny things, though, is like every single faction can manufacture this. I'm going to throw up on like the graphics, like the Inner Sphere Standard Battle Armor manufacturer information. You could go to sarna.net and find yourself, but I just kind of think this is very funny. It's just like they're just like every industry on there. Ceres Metals, Korean Enterprises, Cosby Mimer Research Firm, Luthian Armor Works, Hellespont Industries. It's just everybody builds these battle armor because everybody can use them in the Inner Sphere. The funny thing is they cost 400,000 C-bills. I'm assuming that's for a unit of 4, but I could be wrong. That could be, honestly, 1 guy. Maybe it is just 1 guy. I don't know. Which is pretty hilarious, I mean, because that's way too many C-bills. Yeah, it's got to be 400,000 for 4 men. That's just crazy. But this is definitely below an elemental. I almost want to rank it far below because I actually tend to think that the other variants, the unique ones, are generally better. I'm just going to rank it below an elemental. Because for the Inner Sphere, at least you can bring a small laser variant, and it is mechanized swarm and leg. I don't know why it doesn't have an anti-personnel mount. Those are usually like 5 kilograms. They don't weigh anything. They're like, why isn't this on there? But it doesn't have one. Now we come to the Longinus battle armor. It's another 1,000 kilogrammer. This is one of the battle armors that's used by, I do believe, the Free Worlds League and the Word of Blake. So once again, it's got 4-man squads and 6-man squads. 4 and 6, whatever. It's got ground MP of 1, a jump MP of 3, but it only has the jump MP once it's jettisoned its SRM pack. So this one does actually have a detachable single-shot SRM-2 launcher. Okay, that's pretty darn good. It's got a modular weapon mount that can contain everything from a flamer, small laser machine gun, or a David Light Gauss rifle. The David Light Gauss rifle got a good long range, but it only does 1 point of damage per guy, so teeny. Now, I should cover this for the rules, the little rules sections I've been giving. When battle armor fire, let's say you're having an elemental, let's say a point of elementals is firing, and a point of elementals is 5 min. If you hit with your small lasers, you would then roll on the 5 cluster chart to see how many guys actually strike the mechs, or the mech you're targeting, or the vehicle, or whatever you're targeting. Then you would roll individually for each location of each small laser. Hooray! The same thing happens, though, when you're firing missile weapons from these guys. If you've got the SRM-2 launchers on a unit of elementals, essentially you're firing an SRM-10. That is some significantly potentially good damage coming off these guys. I mean, that's an SRM-10. You're rolling on the 10 chart, just like if you're firing an LRM-10. If you've got some of the guys that are mounting, as we get to later on, MRMs and LRMs, yeah, it's crazy. And their clusters on their things are listed potentially different. They might be 1 point per damage missile clusters that if you have 5 guys would be doing 5 individual 1 point shots. Again, this is one of the things that makes battle armor kind of cool. You want something that's going to seek out critical hits? A point of battle armor might be your solution. But back to the Longinus. It cannot make anti-mech, swarm attacks, or use its jump movement so long as it's still mounting that jettisonable SRM-2. Thankfully, it is mechanized, so you can latch onto your own mechs and be carried around. And then you can be deployed, fire your SRMs, and then get into the normal battle for battle armor, jumping and firing their weapons. Still, this is also one of the really cool looking battle armors. I mean, you can just tell from the picture on the screen that this thing is a pretty cool, badass looking battle armor. I would love to see this one be made by Catalyst, just like they did the elemental points, in the future. Honestly, I'd like to see a lot of the battle armor come out, because there aren't that many options for battle armor, so there's something that they could be adding into a lot more things. Like, you could start seeing some boxes of various battle armor things. I'd like to see that, honestly. I have a lot of these from the Island Metals line of miniatures, where they're just a single, little metal guy, and I just glued, the little something or whatever, and just use them as one guy representing an entire point, so they take up less space on the tabletop. But counterpoint to that, I really like the way the 5-man elemental stands look from Catalyst. So, yeah, each to your own. Still, the Longinus is really... This is about as close we're going to get for a while to basically, it's an elemental. It's 1 point of armor shy, and it can't jump while it has the missiles. But aside from that, once it's fired its missiles, it's back to being an elemental. It's got the anti-personnel mount, it's got its other gun mount, it's got pretty good armor, just one below the elementals. So it's basically an elemental. We're finally there. So just for having a mech or battle armor that's basically an elemental. Next up is the Purifier Adaptive Battle Armor. Oh, this thing is weird. This is a weird bit of battle armor. It's another 1,000 kilogrammer. I do believe it's only Word of Blake that uses this. Maybe Comstar, but it's comes in 6-man points, or 6-man units, so it's not basic Intersphere. It's got a ground MP of 1, a jump MP of 3. The Purifier Battle Armor mounts Mimetic Armor. This means it only has 6 points of armor, and the Trooper, so 7 points all total per guy. The interesting thing is how Mimetic Armor works. The slower you go, the better the armor is. It's not the range from the enemy to you that gives the armor its bonuses to defense. It's how speedy you are. I do believe if you move no hexes, you have a +3, 1 hex a +2, 2 hexes a +1, and 3 hexes a +0. It's a sniper unit. You run this version with the support PPC, which is 2 damage per guy, out to 7 hexes in range, and you essentially are using it as a micro sniper unit. That's where they're going to work the best. Don't move, just shoot. They are mechanized, they can do swarm and leg attacks, they have no anti-personnel mount. And as interesting as these are, I have to put this as below an elemental. It's pretty cool, and it's got an interesting design idea behind it, and yay, support PPC. Little 2-point PPC is pretty cool, but it's just not as good. I mean, it's lacking some of the stuff the other ones have. Durability, the ability to move and shoot. I mean, I think this game can move and shoot, but when it does, it's just not as defensive. And it's lacking anti-personnel or a secondary weapon. Still, they're pretty cool. Next up is the Raiden. This is Krita's version of the Inner Sphere standard battle armor. So you can imagine, it's got 1 movement ground, 3 movement jumping. It's got 9+1 for armor and trooper. It's got 1 weapon mount. And that's it. It can use small lasers, flamers, machine guns. It doesn't even have an anti-personnel weapon. It really is just a differently looking Inner Sphere standard battle armor without anything added to it. It just looks cooler. Until you get to one very specific version of it. That's not covered in the 3058 technical readout, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. There is the MRM version. It mounts... Each guy in the unit mounts an MRM-1 with 4 shots. Now, why is this important? It's because an MRM mounted on a battle armor can go 15 freaking hexes. Still. This means that, remember, that when battle armor move, they don't generate a movement modifier. And because this is not torso-mounted missiles, it's an arm-mounted launcher for these MRMs, you can jump 3 hexes and fire these stupid MRMs all the way across the battlefield nearly. Sure, they're 1 point per missile only, but remember, it's cluster 1 for these, so it's 1 point per missile on on essentially a 4 chart. So you might get 3 locations, you go ping, ping, ping. And again, if you're looking for things, if an enemy has multiple open locations and you're looking to maybe crit seek, these are brilliant crit seekers. So it's really just one version of the Raiden I think is actually worth fielding. And that is the MRM variant. Still, the Raiden falls in the same place as every other one of the basic Inner Sphere battle armors. Below an elemental. It's just where they go. The next one up is a very interesting battle armor. It's called the Sloth. The Sloth is essentially a prototype for the battle armor we'll be looking at immediately afterwards. This is a heavy battle armor, or it's also known as a 1500 kilogram battle armor. It's interesting. It has 3 ground movement points and 0 jump movement points. It doesn't jump at all. It has no arms at all on this thing. It has a miserable 5+1 armor value, that is truly miserable. I mean, it's hard to say how miserable that thing is. And it has 2 small lasers and pop-up mines. Again, more with the mines. You dig in the technical readout and other things like that. How does this work? What does this do? And the pop-up mines can be used only once per game. But it does have the 2 small lasers. So for a battle armor, it's got 2 main guns, really. It just unfortunately just dies really easily because it's only got that, like, 6 points of health. So not that great. A medium pulse laser from the Inner Sphere makes them dead. But remember, these are just the prototypes. I'm fairly certain that if you're using the MUL, the Master Unit List, to find out what kind of units you're using in any place, these are mostly listed in the extinct category. Which is just fine, because the battle armor that's coming up after these is amazing. But the Sloth only has the 1 variant, and that variant puts it far below an elemental. So let's talk about the battle armor that it was prototyping for. The Fenrir. This is assault class battle armor, weighing in at 2,000 kilograms. It has a ton of variants, and it is disturbing. It has 4 ground MP and no jumping MP. It sadly still has the miserable low armor of the Sloth of 5+1, And it doesn't have stealth or anything like that to give it some bonuses. However, this thing carries some significant guns. There's a version that carries 3 machine guns. There's a version that carries 3 small lasers. A version that carries 2 small pulse lasers. A version that carries a medium pulse laser. Yes, a medium pulse laser. 4 medium pulse lasers on a unit of battle armor. It's not bad at all. It's got an SRM-4 version. So 4 of these guys with SRM-4s, they each have 4 launches. We're talking about a freaking SRM-16. That is crazy. I love it. It has a heavy mortar version with a machine gun. And it's got an ER medium laser version. Yeah, we're talking about a version that can fire 4 ER medium lasers, 12 hexes in sphere versions. That's good. I mean, I'm having trouble ranking this one because it's definitely not better than an elemental. But I'm going to say it's basically like an elemental. It's got really good offensive ability. It dies a lot faster. But this thing is pretty sick. And they're not mechanized. There's no swarm attack. There's no leg attack. These are just miniature lion-shaped or whatever. You see the picture on the screen. Lion-shaped-ish kind of like weapon carriers. Still, that's pretty good because, you know, at least they've got the +1 to being hit because of the dispersed formation that all battle armor has. And, again, they're not affected by movement when they're shooting, so you can use your movement to hide in places pretty effectively and take advantage of that and take some good shots. So, it's pretty cool. I like them. I do. Next up is the Kanazuchi. This is crazy, crazy battle armor. It's the assault class again at 2,000 kilograms per guy. Once again, it has no swarm attacks, no leg attacks, no mechanized, but it does have anti-personnel, so props for that. Here's the thing about this thing. It has 15 +1 armor. Each guy can take a Gauss rifle shell to the face and keep going. That's impressive. It's got some crazy versions too on these things. The basic standard version mounts a medium laser per guy and 2 SRM-2s one-shots. The biggest problem with these things is their movement speed is a whopping 1 hex per turn. So if you don't have something that can transport 8 tons of infantry, cargo infantry to the battlefield, these suckers are going very slowly. They're really just a defensive unit at this point in time, which is kind of sad. The funny thing is, there are other variants out there. The upgrade variant from the Jihad era, which I'll show on the screen, has 2 MRM-1s with 4 shots apiece and 2 support PPCs per guy and an anti-personnel mount. Yes, this is a unit of battle armor that is able to fire 5 weapons a round. That's crazy. Sure, those support PPCs only do 2 damage, and those MRMs only do 1 damage each, but they can reach out and touch things. And again, they're hard to kill. So honestly, making these things like base defenders, or like for fighting in cities or whatever, like mechs come down, can't escape them down like a street or whatever, they're pretty good. I want to rate them above an elemental, and I'm having trouble doing that because of their speed, though. But in the right situations, these things are really amazingly disgusting. I'm going to put it as basically an elemental because it's slacking the speed. It's really its downside. It is just slow and plodding. But they are so cool otherwise. We're going to finally get into the clan battle armor now. And there are only 4 units of these, so we're actually getting pretty close to the end of the video. The first up of the clan battle armor is the Sylph. The Sylph is a 750 kilogram light battle armor that only has 5 armor points and a trooper inside, so 5 + 1. It has 1 ground MP, but interestingly enough, it doesn't have jump MP. It has VTOL MP. It flies like a helicopter. The standard version of it has a micro pulse laser and a bomb rack. More rules, you have to go look up in tech manual. The one I tend to prefer, because it's a lot more straightforward, is the upgrade variant, which has a heavy machine gun, and a searchlight. Now, I've do play games at night and stuff like that, so searchlights can be very useful. It's thankfully got mechanized swarm and leg attacks, but unfortunately, these versions do not have any anti-personnel mounts. It's clan battle armor, and the saddest part is, it's below an elemental. Not far below, it's just below an elemental. The really cool thing is that 5 hexes of movement is pretty sweet on them. Next up is the Salamander. This one's a very interesting one because of its armor style. It's a medium battle armor, 1,000 kilograms. It moves one ground free jump, so just like an elemental. It has magnetic battle claws. It can do swarm and leg attacks, and it's mechanizable. But it doesn't have the anti-personnel weapons that basic elementals have. It also only has 7 points of armor plus the trooper, so 7 plus 1. But this armor is interesting because it is fire-resistant armor. So any weapon that says H in the weapon descriptor, flamers, ER flamers, Inferno SRMs, plasma weapons, do 0 points of damage to these suits of armor, to these battle armor. So against certain niche weapons, they're amazingly durable because you can't hurt them at all. And then, of course, the fun part is the standard Salamander loadout carries 2 flamers. I can't be burned, but I can burn you. And it carries an SRM-2 one-shot in the body. It's not bad at all. Other versions carry flamers and ER micro lasers. Some of them carry double heavy machine guns. I personally honestly prefer the one with the double flamers because hello heat. Also because I tend to play all my games with the optional rule of flamers do heat and damage, because otherwise they're not very good weapons unless you're actually fighting infantry. And so these guys are disturbing, very disturbing, when you can generate that much heat and damage from outside. They are really cool, and they are basically going to be in my basically an elemental category. They're missing a little bit of things, but I think the fire-resistant armor plus their weapon units and the fact they carry a lot of guns makes them basically an elemental. Next up is the Undine. This is the underwater suit. So the story, let's do a bit of fiction right now. The fluff. The story behind the elemental is essentially when I do believe Clan Wolf, you can correct me if I'm wrong, please do if I am wrong, please wrong, was developing the when all the clans were developing battle armor, the Clan Wolf kind of decided on the elemental because it kind of covered all of the elements out there. Heat, water, vacuum of space, so forth and so on. It could fight in all the environments, snow and cold and mountaintops, wherever it needed to be. Thus the elemental. At the same time, though, a lot of these other ones are being developed by different clans who are specializing in certain things. Like I think it was Cloud Cobra developed the Sylph, the flying battle armor. The Undine was developed by Clan Goliath Scorpion. Fire Mandrill, Clan Wolf, and Jade Falcon were all working on the Salamander or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, each of these was being developed by different clans for different unique specialized environmental purposes. And the Undine, if you can't tell by its name, is the anti-water battle armor, which means I usually don't like it because I don't take the standard version or the standard version that's all about being in the water. I mean, it's water. Thankfully, there is one version called the upgrade version, which instead of using a underwater movement unit or UMU movement points of 3, it has a jump movement of 3. So the upgrade is not as insulting. The hilarious thing, though, is it mounts an LRM. Yeah. So the upgrade variant is actually a really cool bit of battle armor. It's got 8 points of armor and 1 trooper, so 9 total. It's a movement ground of 1, ground movement of 1, jump movement of 3, because we're talking about the upgrade, because honestly, I don't really ever use the UMU version. It has an ER micro laser, a battle claw, and an LRM-3 with ammo of 4 shots. Yeah, that's an LRM-15 on a battle armor squad that can fire 4 times in a game. Yeah, this one I like. I like the Undine upgrade, not the Undine standard. And I am going to once again rank this as it's basically an elemental, because it really is. It's the underwater elemental, but the other version, the standard version, is just an LRM elemental. Yay! And now we come to the last battle armor of the day. This one was developed by Clan Hell's Horses and is known as the Gnome. And that's a great name, isn't it? This is the heavy battle armor. So there's no assault battle armor from the clans in this book. It's a heavy battle armor weighing at 1,500 kilograms. It's got 1 ground MP, 2 jump MP, and a heavy battle claw. It cannot do swarm and leg attacks. It cannot do anti-personnel attacks. It can be mechanized though. It also mounts 14 plus 1 armor, so it's got 15 points. A Gauss rifle kills a guy. So not as good armored as the Kanazuchi, but it's faster by 1 hex. Also, it has different weapons. The upgrade variant has a medium recoilless rifle, an LRM-2 1 shot, an advanced SRM-2 2 shots. That's pretty cool. The standard version carries an ER small laser and an advanced SRM-2 2 shots. The other upgrade gnome, there are actually 2 upgrade gnomes, is got 2 Bear Hunter autocannons. Yeah, miniature autocannons. And it has detachable advanced SRM-2. In this case, the detachable is just literally a fluff description. So you can jettison it. You don't have to jettison it to jump. It's clan battle armor. You can jump and shoot it. So, yeah, that's pretty freaking sweet. This one is going to be the first battle armor I'm going to rate above elementals. I think it's the first one that actually is superior to elementals. It can take a better punch. It's only a little bit slower. It's got a bigger selection of guns that can do pretty nasty things. I mean, you take that MRR version, or the medium recoilless rifle version, which is available in the Jihad, and we're talking about small lasers with 6 hex range. So it's pretty sweet. Plus it has the LRMs and the advanced SRMs. Still, we have covered the battle armor. Thankfully, there's only 1 battle armor in the just Y category. Sadly, there's only 1 battle armor in the superior to elemental category. We thankfully also did get 5 battle armor I think are equivalent to an elemental. There's a whole swath of inner sphere battle armor and 1 clan battle armor that are less than an elemental, and 3 that are far below. But overall, it's a pretty good spread on the table. And honestly, I was not expecting much better from the inner sphere, that it wasn't going to ever really surpass an elemental. Being equal to, though, I think that should be a pretty good achievement for the inner sphere. And some of those ones, like the Fenrir, are actually pretty scary. Even though they can't take much of a punch, they can do a heck of a lot of damage, which is pretty cool. And battle armor are just naturally kind of annoying on the tabletop. Again, I wish the Kanazuchi had at least 2 ground movement, because oh my goodness, that thing is disgusting. But yeah, this is the first time we've ranked battle armor. Yay! And I do believe we have now come to the end of the video. This is SleeplessRonin saying, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please do the YouTube things, like, subscribe, and comment below. And we'll see you in the future. Sayonara.